The first wrong thing was the silence where hymns should have been. 47 years of crusading had taught me the rhythm of our war prayers, the exact moment when Brother Castellan Marcus would raise his voice to lead the litany of righteous fury. We had sung together through the cleansing of 17 worlds. We had sung while xenos burned around us, and heretics begged for mercy they would never receive. We had sung on the day I earned my chain of devotion, and on the night he became Castellan, and through every blood-soaked hour between. Marcus did not sing. He stood at the forward observation deck of the strike cruiser Unyielding Oath, his ceramite boots planted on the deck plates in the stance I knew as well as my own heartbeat. His back was to me. The void stretched beyond the armor-cry's windows, stars like the Emperor's judgments scattered across infinite darkness. We were 18 hours from planetfall on Kessler's Rest, where the enemy waited with guns and blasphemy and the promise of righteous slaughter. I waited for him to begin the hymn. His gauntleted hand moved instead, fingers forming a shape against the window's reflection, the inverted cross, a sign I had never seen him make in 47 years of brotherhood, a gesture that meant nothing in our chapter's battle cant, belonged to no ritual I had ever witnessed, served no purpose I could name. Then his hand dropped, and he turned, and I saw his eyes. Something had changed behind them. Something I could not identify but which sent a crawling wrongness through the neural interface connecting my consciousness to my power armor's systems. My armor registered elevated stress hormones. My armor did not understand why, neither did I. Brother Nathaniel. His voice emerged normally. The deep resonance of a veteran warrior, the vocal cords surgically enhanced to carry across battlefields. You are early for the deployment briefing. The litany of righteous fury begins at the 19th hour. I spoke the obvious because the obvious had become uncertain. You have led it every day of this crusade. The Marshal has requested modifications to our pre-battle observances. Marcus turned back to the window. There will be no litany tonight, no litany. I stood in the corridor outside the observation deck for 11 minutes after I left him. My ceramite boots did not move. My hearts beat in the doubled rhythm that marked my kind, each pulse pushing gene-enhanced blood through vessels designed to carry a demigod's fury. I tried to understand what I had witnessed. Marcus had never missed a litany, not when his arm was severed at throne's reach, not when fever plague took half our company on the derelict space hulk whispered damnation. Not when his own Gene brother died in his arms on the steps of the heretic cathedral we had come to burn. The Marshal had requested modifications. I walked to find Chaplain Ezekiel. The corridors of the Unyielding Oath were narrow passages designed for warriors in full plate, their walls inscribed with prayers so old the Gothic script had worn smooth in places. Servitors shuffled past me on mechanical legs, their lobotomized faces slack, their purpose reduced to simple functions. I had walked these passages for decades. I had memorized every prayer, every worn edge, every flicker of the lumen globes that cast their sickly yellow light across black metal. Tonight the prayers looked different. I stopped before a section of wall I had passed 10,000 times and stared at words I did not recognize. The script was the same flowing Gothic we used throughout the ship. The language was High Gothic as it should be, but the prayer itself, I read it 3 times before I understood what was wrong. The Emperor's name was missing, where it should have appeared, in the invocation. The text simply skipped forward. By the will of we are delivered. The blank space gaped like a wound in the scripture. I touched the wall, my gauntlet scraped across. Metal that felt newly carved, footsteps behind me, the distinctive sound of ceramite on deck plate. I knew that rhythm. Every warrior's walk was unique, a signature written in the weight distribution of their armor, the length of their stride, the particular way their servo motors whined. This was Brother Anton, who had fought beside me in the tunnels beneath Crassus Prime, who had pulled me from the wreckage when the Orc war machine exploded and buried 3 of us in burning metal. Nathaniel, his voice was strange. Not wrong in the way Marcus's eyes had been wrong, but strange nonetheless. Careful. The chaplain is not receiving visitors tonight. Why? He prepares for the new rites. New rites. I turned to face Anton. His helmet was sealed, visor opaque, face hidden behind the skull mask design we all wore into battle. We did not hide our faces from each other aboard ship. We were brothers. We had bled together, killed together, prayed together. "What new rites?" I asked. "You will learn at the deployment briefing." He walked past me without another word. His footsteps echoed down the corridor, and I listened to them fade, and I realized I was afraid. The deployment briefing took place in the Strategium, a circular chamber dominated by a hololith projector that displayed the planet below in rotating blue light. Kessler's Rest was a shrine world, its surface covered in cathedral cities dedicated to the Emperor's glory. The enemy had taken it 3 months ago, heretics who had turned from the light. Our mission was simple: kill them all, burn their works, reclaim the world for proper worship. I had performed this mission on 17 worlds. I knew every phase of the operation. I knew the deployment patterns, the company assignments, the chain of command that would carry orders from the Marshal through the Castellans to every brother in the crusade. I did not know the strangers standing beside Marshal Vincent, 3 figures in robes the color of dried blood. Their faces were hidden behind masks of polished bronze, featureless except for small holes where eyes should be. They carried no weapons I could see. They wore no obvious markings of rank or allegiance. Marshal Vincent looked at them the way I had never seen him look at anyone who was not one of us. With deference. "Brothers," the Marshal's voice rolled across the Strategium. "Our crusade enters its final phase. The liberation of Kessler's Rest will mark the culmination of 70 years of sacred warfare. But victory requires sacrifice. It requires the setting aside of old certainties." Murmuring spread through the assembled warriors. I counted 47 brothers in full plate, the elite of our crusade. Men I had known for decades, men I trusted with my life. Their murmuring sounded wrong. It sounded rehearsed. "These servants of truth," the Marshal continued, gesturing to the robed figures, "have shown me the path forward. The old litanies have failed us. The old prayers ring hollow. We have killed billions in the Emperor's name. And still the darkness grows, still heresy spreads, still the Imperium rots from within." I watched the warriors around me. Some nodded, some stood perfectly still. None objected, none except me. "Marshal." My voice cut across the Strategium. "What servants, what path? We are sworn to the Emperor's light and no other. We know no doctrine but the High Marshal's word and the sacred texts of our founding." The silence that followed was absolute. The ship's environmental systems hummed in the background. Somewhere beneath us, engines pushed us toward the planet where we would wage our holy war. Marshal Vincent smiled. I had served under this man for 31 years. I had watched him tear the head from an orc warlord with his bare hands. I had seen him weep, once, when his mentor fell defending a refugee convoy from raiders. I had never seen him smile. The expression did not fit his face. "Brother Nathaniel," he said, "your devotion is admirable. It will serve you well in the trials to come." One of the robed figures stepped forward. Its bronze mask turned toward me. Behind those small eye holes, something glinted that was not quite light. "This one questions," the figure said. Its voice was a whisper that somehow filled the room. "This one doubts. This one remembers the old words." "Yes," the Marshal said. "He does." The briefing continued as if nothing had happened. Deployment orders, tactical assignments, drop pod coordinates, and target priorities. I listened with one part of my mind, while another part screamed in silence. I'd been assigned to the rearguard, a ceremonial position. We would descend to the planet after the initial assault, securing ground already taken, eliminating scattered resistance. I had held the vanguard for 17 years. I had led the first wave into the heart of enemy resistance on a dozen worlds. Now they wanted me in the rear. After the briefing dissolved, I moved through the dispersing warriors toward Chaplain Ezekiel's quarters. Anton had told me he was not receiving visitors. I no longer cared what Anton had told me. The corridor to the chaplain's chambers passed through the ship's reliquary, where sacred artifacts were kept in stasis fields and prayer niches lined the walls. I had walked this path countless times to seek spiritual counsel, to confess my doubts, to receive the blessing that preceded every battle. Tonight, the prayer niches were empty. The devotional scrolls that hung from the ceiling were gone. The reliquaries stood open, their contents removed. Even the eternal flame that burned in the chamber's center, a flame that had been carried from our founding world and had never been extinguished in 11,000 years, was dark. Cold ash filled the brazier where the flame had lived. I ran. My ceramite boots hammered against the deck. The sound echoed through corridors that felt suddenly alien, suddenly hostile, the walls pressing close despite their unchanged dimensions. I passed servitors who turned their dead eyes toward me. I passed crew members who stepped aside with expressions I could not read. I reached the chaplain's door and found it sealed. The access panel glowed red, lockdown status. I entered my command codes, codes that should have opened any door on this ship for a sword brother of my seniority, and watched the panel reject them. "Chaplain!" I pounded on the door. The ceramite and adamantine barrier absorbed my blows without vibration. "Ezekiel, open this door." From inside a sound, wet, rhythmic, like meat being processed in the ship's nutrient reclamation systems. Then Ezekiel's voice, distorted by distance and the door's thickness. "Walk away, Nathaniel. You were not chosen. Walk away while you still can." "Chosen for what?" "Ezekiel, what is happening on this ship?" The wet sound stopped. "The crusade ends," Ezekiel said. "Everything we believed was a lie. The truth has found us at last." The door remained sealed. I found my blade in my quarters, a relic sword that had been carried by my chapter's warriors for 3,000 years, passed from mentor to student across the centuries. The blade had been given to me by Castellan Hendrix after I saved his life on the walls of Fortress Martyrdom, 16 years before he fell to a daemon's claws. When I drew the sword, the metal sang. I had heard that song 100 times. The harmonic resonance of consecrated steel, blessed by 1,000 chaplains, inscribed with prayers so potent they hummed in the presence of the faithful. The blade knew its wielder. The blade knew when righteous warfare was at hand. Tonight the song was wrong. The pitch had shifted, the harmonics warped. The blade still sang, but the tune had changed, and in that changed tune I heard something that sounded almost like laughter. I sheathed the sword and tried to understand. 4 hours until planetfall, 4 hours to unravel a conspiracy that had apparently swallowed my entire crusade. 4 hours before we descended to a shrine world and did whatever it was that Marshal Vincent and his robed servants actually intended. I went looking for anyone who might still be themselves. Brother Sergeant Thomas had served with me since my earliest days in the chapter. We had trained together. We had bled together. We had argued over doctrine so fiercely that our instructors had separated us, then watched with satisfaction as we fought back to back against enemies who took our division for weakness. I found Thomas in the arming chamber, applying blessed oils to his bolter. His helmet sat beside him on the bench. His face was his own, scarred, weathered, the milky eye where shrapnel had taken his sight on the day we earned our crusade badges together. "Nathaniel." He did not look up from his work. "You should be in your quarters. The new vigil begins soon. Thomas, look at me." He continued applying oil. The ritual motions were precise, the pattern familiar, but something in his rhythm had changed. The same wrongness I had felt in Marcus's silence, in Anton's careful words, in the chaplain's wet sounds behind a sealed door. "Thomas, the prayers are missing from the walls. The eternal flame is dead. The marshal is taking orders from strangers in masks. Tell me what is happening." He finally looked up. His remaining eye met mine. "You are not chosen," he said, "but you could be, if you stopped questioning, if you let go of the old lies and accepted the truth." "What truth?" Thomas set down his bolter and stood. He was my height, 8 feet of gene-enhanced muscle and bone wrapped in ceramite and faith. We had stood shoulder to shoulder against enemies that would have broken ordinary men. We had trusted each other with our souls. "The Emperor is not what we believed," Thomas said. "He never was. The truth has been hidden for 10,000 years, but now it emerges. Now we see clearly. Now we understand that our devotion was wasted on a corpse that never cared, that never watched, that never answered a single prayer. That is heresy. That is reality." I drew my blade. The sword sang its wrong song and Thomas did not flinch. He looked at the weapon I had pointed at his chest and smiled the same smile I had seen on the marshal's face. "That blade knows the truth," Thomas said. "It always has. The prayers inscribed upon it were never meant for the Emperor. The blessings that make it sing were given by older powers, truer powers. Everything our founders believed was a mask for something else. You are lying, test it." Thomas spread his arms. "Strike me. Let the blade judge which of us serves the true faith." I wanted to strike. Every fiber of my being screamed for it, but my arms would not move. The sword sang louder. The laughter in its song became unmistakable. "You hear it," Thomas said. "You feel it. The blade was never yours. You were the blade's. 3 hours until planetfall. I ran. The ship had become a maze of wrong turns and altered passages. Corridors I had memorized led to destinations I did not recognize. Doors opened on rooms that should not have existed. I passed a chamber where brothers knelt in a circle around one of the robed figures, chanting in a language that hurt to hear, their voices blending into a single sound that crawled across my skin like insects. I passed the hangar bay and saw the drop pods being loaded with equipment I did not recognize. Black cylinders the height of a man, covered in symbols that writhed when I looked directly at them. Servitors moved among them with mechanical precision, their lobotomized faces showing no reaction to the corruption they served. I passed the bridge and heard Marshal Vincent giving orders in a voice that had grown too deep, too resonant, as if something else spoke through his throat. I passed a viewport and saw Kessler's Rest growing larger, its cathedral cities visible now as tiny glints of gold against brown continents. The shrine world, the target. I understood suddenly what they intended. Kessler's Rest was not being liberated, it was being harvested. Whatever power had corrupted my brothers needed something from those cathedrals, something hidden in the planet's sacred sites, something that could only be retrieved by warriors who had devoted their lives to the faith they were now betraying. The crusade had always been heading here. 70 years of warfare, 17 worlds burned clean, billions of lives ended, all of it was preparation. All of it was positioning. We had been tools, we had been weapons aimed at this single moment. And now that the moment had arrived, those of us who might resist had been identified, isolated, and assigned to the rear guard, where we could be dealt with quietly. I had perhaps 2 hours to stop it. I went to the armory. Brother Armsman Reginald controlled access to the heavy weapons, the specialist ammunition, the sacred devices that could turn the tide of battles when conventional arms failed. He had been armsman for as long as I had served in the crusade, a veteran of the old wars, a man who had seen things that should not be seen and remained faithful through all of them. I found him kneeling in the armory's central nave, his back to the entrance, his voice raised in prayer. The words were high Gothic, the words were correct. Reginald. He turned, his face was streaked with tears, his eyes were clear, terrified and horrified but clear, showing none of the strange blankness I had seen in my other brothers. "Nathaniel, thank the throne." He rose on shaking legs. I thought I was the only one left. What happened? How did this, when did? I do not know. Reginald moved toward me, his voice dropping to a whisper. I noticed the changes 3 days ago, small things at first. The timing of prayers shifted. The marshal meeting with strangers no one could identify. Then the rot spread faster. By yesterday, half the brothers had that look in their eyes. By this morning, almost everyone. The chaplain? Reginald shook his head. He was one of the first. I saw them take him to the reliquary on the second night, whatever they did to him there. When he emerged, he was not the same man. The flame died that same hour, the eternal flame. The symbol of our founding, our faith, our unbroken devotion across 11,000 years. What do they want? I have been listening. Reginald glanced toward the armory's entrance, hiding in the ventilation shafts, moving through service corridors. They do not know I remain uncorrupted. They speak freely when they think they are alone. Tell me. The shrine world contains something buried beneath its greatest cathedral. Something old, something that predates the Imperium itself. The robed ones call it the foundation stone. They say it was placed there to anchor something in place, to hold a door closed. And they mean to open it. They mean to destroy it. The stone, I mean. Whatever it anchors, they want it freed. They believe Reginald's voice cracked. They believe the Emperor himself placed it there, 10,000 years ago, in the age of legends, when he still walked among humanity. The sword at my hip sang its wrong song. I drew it and held it between us. They said the blade was never mine, I said. They said the prayers inscribed upon it serve something else. They said our founders lied about everything. Reginald looked at the sword. The tears on his face caught the armory's light. I do not know what is true anymore, he said. I only know that they are wrong. I feel it in my bones, Nathaniel. Whatever power has taken our brothers, whatever lies they believe, the faith I have carried for 200 years cannot be entirely false. Something real answered when I prayed. Something true guided my hand in battle. Then we stopped them. 2 of us against 45 corrupted brothers, 3 void-touched servants, and a marshal who speaks with something else's voice? Yes, Reginald laughed. It was a broken sound, hollow and hopeless, but there was steel beneath it. I always said you were the most stubborn man I had ever met. He moved to the armory's locked vaults. If we are to die for the Emperor's truth, we should at least die with the best weapons available. The vaults opened. Inside lay devices I had heard of but never seen. Plasma weapons that burned with the heat of captive suns. Bolts inscribed with prayers so potent they could wound the incorporeal. A single melter charge powerful enough to breach a starship's hull, and resting on a pedestal of its own, a relic that had been carried by our chapter's first chaplain, a rod of black iron topped with a crux terminatus, the sacred symbol of our faith, forged, according to legend, from metal salvaged from the Emperor's own armor. The hammer of truth. It has not been used in 2,000 years, Reginald said. The last warrior to wield it went mad. He said it showed him things. He said it spoke to him in the night. But if anything aboard this ship remains true to its consecration, it should be this. I reached for it. The moment my gauntlet touched the black iron, the sword at my hip screamed. Pain flooded my arm. The blade's song became a shriek, a howl, a sound of rage and terror that had nothing human in it. I felt the weapon fighting against me, trying to pull free, trying to strike at the rod I now held. The hammer of truth was warm. Its weight was nothing, a feather in my enhanced grip, but its presence was vast, filling my awareness with something I had not felt since this nightmare began. Certainty, the sword, Reginald said. Nathaniel, the sword. I looked down. The blade in my sheath was glowing. Red light leaked from beneath the scabbard, pulsing in rhythm with the wrong song that now filled the armory with its corruption. Draw it, Reginald said. Let the hammer judge. I drew the blade. The metal had changed. Where silver steel had gleamed, now something darker showed through. Corrosion spreading across the surface like disease across flesh. The prayers inscribed along the blade were shifting, their Gothic letters rearranging into configurations that made my eyes water. I brought the hammer of truth against the sword. The detonation threw us both across the armory. I struck the far wall and felt ceramite crack, felt ribs protest against the impact, felt blood fill my mouth where I had bitten through my tongue. When I opened my eyes, the sword lay in pieces on the deck, not broken, shattered, as if the metal had been glass all along and the hammer had revealed its true fragility. Where the pieces lay, something writhed. Small, black, many-legged things that crawled from the broken steel and died in the armory's light. I watched them shrivel and disappear, and I understood what had been riding my hip for 16 years. The blade had never been mine. I had been the blade's, and now I was free. 1 hour, Reginald said from where he had fallen. Blood streaked his face, his arm hung at a wrong angle. 1 hour until planetfall. Nathaniel, what do we do? The hammer of truth pulsed in my grip. We stop them, I said. The corridors felt different now. With the sword's corruption purged and the hammer's weight in my hand, I could see what I had been blind to before. The walls themselves were changing, the prayers being carved away, replaced by symbols that hurt to observe. The servitors moved with new purpose, carrying black cylinders toward the drop pods. The air tasted of incense and something else, something sweeter and more rotten. We moved toward the bridge. Reginald carried a plasma pistol in his working hand, his broken arm strapped to his side. He walked with the determination of a man who expected to die, and had made peace with it. I had seen that look before, on the faces of brothers who charged into overwhelming odds to buy time for their companions. I had never expected to wear it myself. The bridge doors were sealed, but the hammer of truth sang when I raised it. The metal parted like flesh before a blade, peeling back to reveal the chamber where Marshal Vincent stood before the command throne. He was not alone. The three robed figures surrounded him in a triangle formation. Their bronze masks had been removed. What lay beneath was not face, was not flesh, was nothing that should have existed in real space. I saw geometry that folded in on itself. I saw colors that existed outside the spectrum. I saw shapes that were looking back at me, and in their attention I felt the weight of something vast and hungry and ancient. "Brother Nathaniel," the Marshal's voice echoed with harmonics that hurt, "you were not chosen, but you came anyway. I came to stop you." "With what? A broken armsman and a relic no one has dared touch in 2 millennia? Vincent gestured toward the hammer in my hand. "Do you even understand what you hold?" "I understand it purged the corruption from my blade." "Corruption?" The three figures laughed in unison, a sound like grinding metal. "Elevation, enhancement, truth revealed through flesh and steel. Your blade was a gift. It carried you toward understanding, and you destroyed it. I destroyed something that was never what it claimed to be. As is all faith," Vincent said, "as is all devotion, as is the Emperor himself, a corpse on a throne fed by the souls of 1,000 sacrificed psychers daily, sustained by an empire built on lies and blood. We worshipped suffering. We built cathedrals to pain. And for what? A being who cannot hear, cannot respond, cannot save a single soul from the darkness that consumes everything." I stepped forward. "I do not know what the Emperor is," I said. "I do not know if our prayers were ever answered. But I know what you have become. I know what you serve. And I know that whatever truth you claim to have found, it has cost you everything that made you my brothers." The robed figures moved. They were fast, faster than anything physical should. But the hammer was faster. I felt it guide my arm, felt it sing with a voice that cut through the wrongness filling the bridge, felt it connect with the first figure in a detonation of light that erased the abomination from existence. The second figure screamed in that grinding metal voice and lunged for Reginald. My brother armsman fired his plasma pistol. The shot went wide, scorching the bridge's ceiling, but it bought him a moment. I spun and brought the hammer down in an arc that caught the creature mid-lunge. It dissolved. Not died, dissolved. Its not flesh came apart in ribbons that evaporated before they could touch the deck. Its scream faded into echoes that seemed to come from very far away. The third figure did not attack. It raised its not hands and the air around me became solid. I felt pressure crushing my armor, felt my enhanced skeleton straining against forces that wanted to compress me into nothing. The hammer burned in my grip, fighting against the power that held me, but it was not enough. I could not move. "You think faith is enough," Vincent said. He walked toward me, his footsteps echoing in the frozen air. "You think devotion and duty and sacred relics can stand against the truth we have found. But faith is just another lie, Nathaniel, another way to make slaves accept their chains." He reached out and touched my chest plate. His gauntlet was warm, his touch was gentle. His eyes held the emptiness I had first seen on the observation deck, and behind that emptiness, something else looked through. "The foundation stone will be destroyed," he said. "The door will open, and everything the Emperor built to keep it closed will finally fall. We are not betrayers, brother. We are liberators. We are the first truth-tellers in 10,000 years of lies." I could not speak. The pressure had reached my throat, my jaw, my tongue. "Kill him," Vincent said to the remaining figure. "Make it slow, make it educational. Perhaps in his final moments, he will understand." The pressure began to tighten. Then Reginald screamed, not in pain, in triumph. I heard the melter charge activate. I felt the flash of heat even through the force that held me. I saw the remaining figure turn toward the sound, just as Reginald threw himself forward with the explosive clutch to his broken chest. The detonation took them both. The pressure vanished. I fell to my knees gasping, the hammer still clutched in my hand. When I looked up, Vincent stood at the edge of a crater that had been gouged into the bridge's deck. Below, I could see the armored hull of the ship, breached by the melter's fury. Reginald was gone. The figure that had held me was gone. And Vincent, Marshal Vincent, who had led our crusade for 31 years, who had wept when his mentor died, who had been the finest warrior and the most faithful servant I had ever known. Vincent was reaching for the sword at his own hip. His blade sang, the same wrong song I had heard from mine, the same corruption made audible, the same truth that had been hidden in the weapons of our founding since the beginning. All our relics, Vincent said, all our sacred artifacts, all the weapons passed down from mentor to student across the centuries. They were never ours, Nathaniel. They were gifts from our true masters, seeds planted in our chapter's soul, waiting to bloom. He drew the blade. The metal was not silver. It had never been silver. It was something that looked like steel but moved like oil, something that drank the light and exhaled shadow, something alive in ways that steel could never be. Your hammer purged your blade, Vincent said, but it cannot purge them all. It cannot save the hundreds of brothers already transformed. It cannot stop the drop pods from falling. It cannot prevent what has been prepared for 70 years. He was right. We stood on the bridge of a ship filled with corrupted warriors, approaching a planet where the destruction of a sacred artifact would open a door that should never be opened. I had killed 2 of 3 servants. Reginald had killed the 3rd. But 45 brothers remained, and their weapons still sang their wrong songs, and the drop pods were already preparing to fall. I could not stop it. I could only face the man who had been my marshal and try to end him before the end came for everything else. You were the best of us, I said. Vincent smiled his wrong smile. I am still the best, he said. But now I am free, he lunged. The corrupted blade met the hammer of truth in a collision that shattered windows and cracked deck plates. I felt the impact in my bones, felt the relic's power surge against the corruption in Vincent's weapon, felt 2 faiths meet and strain against each other. He was stronger than me. He had always been stronger, enhanced beyond even standard modifications, blessed by a chaplain whose blessings had apparently served something other than the Emperor. His blade moved in patterns I could barely follow, each strike aimed at joints and weak points, each swing carrying the weight of something that existed outside physical law. I parried, I retreated, I bled. His blade found gaps in my armor. My chest plate cracked. My left arm hung useless where a thrust had severed motor controls. Blood filled my mouth again, and this time I could not tell if it was from my tongue or from something deeper. But I did not fall. The hammer kept me standing. Its song wrapped around my will and held it together, feeding me strength from somewhere I could not name. Every blow that should have ended me instead drove me to strike back, to push forward, to close the distance between Vincent's perfect technique and my desperate fury. We fought across the bridge. We fought through the wreckage of the melter's crater. We fought until my vision blurred and my heart stuttered and the hammer's song became the only thing holding my consciousness in place. Then I saw an opening. Vincent overextended, a technique he had used against me 100 times in sparring. A feint followed by a killing thrust, a move I knew better than my own breathing. He was not faking. He had forgotten that I knew it. I stepped inside his guard and brought the hammer up. The black iron struck his chest plate. The relic's song became a roar. Light exploded from the point of impact, white and pure and terrible, and I felt Vincent's armor crack and his flesh beneath it char and the corruption in his blood boil. He screamed, not in his own voice, in the voices of everything that had inhabited him, every lie and every promise and every truth that had eaten away at who he was. The scream went on for seconds that felt like hours, and then it stopped, and Marshal Vincent fell, and the sword in his hand shattered the same way mine had, releasing the same black, crawling things to die in the light. I stood over his body. His eyes were clear again. The emptiness was gone, replaced by something I recognized, terror and shame, and beneath it all, grief. He was himself again in his final moments, and he knew what he had become. Nathaniel. His voice was barely a whisper. The stone. You have to. The others will still. The door. He died. I left his body on the ruined bridge and walked toward the hangar bay. The drop pods were falling. I could feel the ship shuddering as they launched, could see through shattered viewports the streaks of fire descending toward Kessler's Rest. 45 corrupted brothers, carrying black cylinders covered in writhing symbols, heading for the greatest cathedral on a shrine world. I reached the last pod. It was meant for the rearguard, for me and the others who had not been chosen, who would have been dealt with quietly after the real work was done. Now it sat empty, its systems primed, its trajectory locked in. I climbed inside, the pod launched, fire wrapped around me as atmospheric entry began. Through the pod's sensors I watched the cathedral cities of Kessler's Rest grow larger, watched the golden spires and prayer-carved walls, and the millions of faithful who had no idea what was descending toward them. My brothers would reach the foundation stone first. I could not stop that, but perhaps I could reach them before they destroyed it. The pod struck ground. I emerged into a world of golden light and sacred silence. The cathedral rose above me, its towers reaching toward a sky that had never known pollution, its walls inscribed with prayers that had been recited for 10,000 years. Pilgrims scattered from my landing site, their screams echoing through streets paved with devotional texts. I ran. Inside, the cathedral was vast, a space meant to humble human souls, to remind them of their smallness before the emperor's glory. Columns carved from single blocks of marble supported a ceiling so high it vanished into shadow. Stained glass windows depicted the great crusades of ancient days, the light that streamed through them painting everything in colors that seemed impossibly pure. My brothers were already inside. I heard their ceramite footsteps. I heard the wrong songs of their corrupted blades. I heard chanting in languages that should not exist, voices raised in praise of powers that wanted only to devour. The foundation stone lay beneath the high altar. They had already begun to dig. I descended through passages carved in the emperor's own time, through crypts where saints rested in jeweled tombs, through vaults where relics beyond price gathered dust. The air grew colder as I went deeper. The light grew stranger, not fading but changing, taking on qualities that had nothing to do with lumen globes or stained glass. I found them in a chamber that should not have existed. 45 brothers in corrupted plate, surrounding a stone that pulsed with light I could barely perceive. The black cylinders had been arranged around it in patterns that matched the symbols on their surfaces. The robed figures' work, I realized. The geometry they had brought from whatever void they called home. Brother Sergeant Thomas stood at the stone's edge, his blade raised, preparing the killing blow. "Thomas." My voice echoed in the chamber. "It does not have to end this way." He turned, his eyes were empty, his blade sang its wrong song, his faith, whatever he called faith now, was absolute. "You cannot stop us," he said. "One broken warrior with a relic he barely understands. You are already dead, Nathaniel. You just have not accepted it. Perhaps I raised the hammer of truth, but I will not accept it quietly. They came for me then, all of them, 45 brothers who had been my family transformed into monsters wearing familiar faces. Their blades sang their corruption. Their fists struck with force that would have pulped ordinary men. They surrounded me and tore at me and tried to drag me down. The hammer sang. I do not know how long we fought. Time lost meaning in that chamber where light that was not light illuminated stone that was not quite stone. I killed brothers I had loved. I felt their blood on my hands and their corruption dying as my weapon found them. I took wounds that should have killed me 3 times over and kept fighting because the hammer would not let me stop. When it was over, I was alone. Thomas was the last to fall. He lay before the foundation stone, his chest plate cracked, his corruption purged in his final moments. His eyes were clear again, like Vincent's had been, and the shame in them was enough to break hearts. "I remember," he whispered. "I remember who I was. I remember why we fought. Nathaniel, I am sorry. I am so sorry." I knelt beside him. "I know, brother. He died." The foundation stone pulsed. I looked at it, really looked, and finally understood what it was. Not a stone at all. A seal. A lock on a door that existed in dimensions beyond human comprehension. The Emperor had placed it here 10,000 years ago, and in doing so, he had kept something on the other side, something that my brothers had been prepared to free. I reached out and touched its surface. The hammer's song harmonized with the stone's pulse. The light that was not light wrapped around my hand, and I felt something respond, something vast and ancient and utterly alien but not hostile. Curious, patient, waiting, the door would not open today, but neither would it remain locked forever. Somewhere in chambers I would never find, the architects of this conspiracy had planted other seeds, other chapters, other lies hidden in sacred artifacts. The corruption would spread, because corruption always spreads, and one day someone would succeed where my brothers had failed. The stone would be destroyed, the door would open. Everything the Emperor had built would fall. But not today. I released the stone and stood. The hammer of truth hung heavy in my grip, heavier now than it had been, as if the battles had added weight to its substance. My body was broken in ways that would take months to heal. My brothers lay dead around me, every one of them. I was the last of the crusade. I climbed out of the chamber, up through the crypts and vaults, into the cathedral's golden light. Pilgrims stared at me, a giant in shattered armor, covered in blood that was both his and others, carrying a relic that pulsed with power they could barely perceive. I walked past them without speaking. Outside, the city spread before me, golden spires, sacred streets, millions of souls who would never know how close they had come to something worse than death. I found a Vox unit and began broadcasting. The message would reach the wider Imperium. It would bring inquisitors and interrogators and officials who would want to understand what had happened here. They would find the bodies of my brothers. They would find the foundation stone. They would find the corrupted blades and the black cylinders and the ruins of a conspiracy that had been 70 years in the making. They would find me. I did not run. When the ships arrived 3 days later, I was sitting on the steps of the cathedral, the hammer across my knees. I had not eaten. I had not slept. I had simply sat and watched the pilgrims pass and tried to understand what I had learned. Our weapons had been corrupted from the beginning. Our founding contained seeds of our betrayal. Everything we believed had been built on a foundation that was never as solid as we thought. But the Emperor's seal had held. The door remained closed, and when the Inquisitor approached me, her retinue spreading out in formations designed to contain a warrior who might pose threat, I rose and offered her the hammer. "Take it," I said. "Test it. Prove that something remains true." She looked at me with eyes that had seen horrors I could not imagine. "You are the sole survivor of a crusade that ended in wholesale corruption. You expect me to trust anything you offer?" "No," I met her gaze. "I expect you to test everything, to assume I am lying, to tear apart every word I say and search for the deception beneath it, and if I find it, then execute me." I lowered myself to my knees. "But if you do not, if the truth is exactly what I claim, then know that they are not finished. Know that other crusades carry the same corruption. Know that the blades we trust are weapons waiting to be turned against us." The Inquisitor was silent for a long moment. Then she took the hammer. Its song filled the air, pure and clear and utterly wrong for the weapon of a corrupted traitor. She felt it. Her retinue felt it. The pilgrims watching from a safe distance felt it. Something true remained. "Tell me everything," the Inquisitor said. I began to speak. The words came slowly at first, then faster. Everything I had witnessed pouring out in a confession that would take hours to complete. The silence where hymns should have been. The empty space where the Emperor's name had been carved away. The wrongness in the blade I had carried for 16 years. The Inquisitor listened. When I was finished, she did not execute me. She gave me a new mission instead, a crusade of one, seeking out the corruption I had barely survived, hunting the seeds planted in other chapters before they could bloom. I accepted. The hammer of truth rests at my hip now, where a corrupted blade once hung. Its weight reminds me of everything I lost. Its song reminds me of everything that remains true. My brothers are dead. My faith is broken, but I am still standing. And somewhere in the void between stars, the architects of betrayal are learning that their weapon failed. That one warrior survived, that the foundation stone still holds. They will come for me, I will be waiting.